Welcome to today's episode of Direct Mail Automation School, the podcast for marketers who are looking for an edge as they deploy direct mail and omnichannel marketing campaigns. I'm Dennis Kelly, CEO of Postalytics, the leading direct mail automation platform designed for marketers to deploy automated direct mail and omnichannel marketing campaigns with the speed, integration, and analytics of digital marketing. Today, our guest is Kevin Lee. Kevin is the visionary CEO at the E-Marketing Association, an organization dedicated to empowering marketers across the advertising, marketing, media, and agency spectrum. He's committed to education and support, and the association facilitates connections and knowledge exchange within the realm of paid media advertising, influencers, promotions, sponsorships, etc., owned media, and CRM and retention marketing. Kevin has also founded We Care, a cause marketing platform, which generated over $8 million for nonprofits. It's becoming the inspiration for Amazon Smile, which is a $450 million in donation platform. Kevin has written 4 books, has spoken at more than 500 events, has published 700 plus articles on marketing. He's an MBA from Yale and is an investor in various ad tech, martech, and e-commerce companies. This is a busy guy, so super excited to have Kevin Lee on board today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Dennis. And I think it's a combination of being busy and being old, right? So when you combine those two things, you've had a chance to do a lot of adventures along the way. So, it's been quite the journey, and happy to share more deets on that.
Awesome. Well, you may be older. We're probably about the same age, but only a person with tremendous energy and passion and excitement for what they do could be doing all these things. So, would absolutely love to hear about kind of how you got here. Tell us about that journey. You were at Yale, and somehow now you're involved in all this great stuff across the marketing spectrum. Tell us your story and your evolution to where you got to today.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to make what has been a very long journey into Reader's Digest, since we can't spend the entire podcast on my history. But, after Yale, I went to McCann Erickson, which was a major ad agency, spent a couple of years there sort of learning the ropes. Then went to a small high-tech ad agency in New Jersey and spun off an agency as a result of meeting a partner there. That agency no longer exists, but was a spinoff of that agency in 1996 and was originally an SEO technology tool before Google was even founded. So we were an SEO technology tool for things like Alta Vista and Lycos and Excite and InfoSpace. And that turned into a nice niche, profitable SaaS, reporting and submission business. And then when GoTo.com launched as the first pay-per-click platform for paid search media, we built one of the first, if not the first, bid alert systems for that. And that evolved from a bid alert system into bid management. And so did it really doubled down on a SaaS platform called Maestro, which managed, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of search spend at one point. And it was a great business. It got less great when Marin Software was founded. Marin raised $101 million in venture money with the target to go public by getting big. They did get big, but they got big by pricing very low. They went public at a $420 million valuation and have never had a profitable quarter, I don't believe, in their entire existence. So they burned through pretty much all their cash. And we saw the writing on the wall a while back, for Maestro, our PPC bid management platform, that every time we went to a pitch meeting, people would say, "Can you match Marin's price? We really like your platform, but, Marin's price is much cheaper." And once they went public, we could say, well, Marin can't even match Marin's price. Just look at their financials. But, we just decided to get out of that business. And in the meantime, Google's internal bid management platform got pretty good. It wasn't very good in the early years, but eventually it became good enough to where we became platform agnostic. We'd use whatever bid management platform a client wanted if they had a preference. If not, we would standardize around Google. Along the way, did it sort of pivoted into becoming more and more like an agency, because to get EBITDA back into the mix, We added services in search, both SEO and paid search. And then clients said, well, can you manage our social for us? And what about earned media social? Can you help us create content? And can you do, content marketing and help us with our blogs? And whenever we had the ability to grow into that service, we would, but we also made a bunch of acquisitions. We made 11 acquisitions of small marketing services firms, even some in the direct mail business. So we even, have a direct mail division. We no longer do the printing, but we still do a fair amount of direct mail because it's so digital these days, as you well know. It's become nearly 100% digital. So that's been the journey in sort of my day job, which is running Did It, a 56-person digital agency, but a bit of a parallel entrepreneur. So along the way, 21 years ago, I started a company called We Care, cause marketing powered shopping. And 11 years ago, Amazon, our biggest partner, and along with about 1,800 other merchants, came to us and said, well, we don't know if people's behavior actually changes with this cause marketing platform that generates revenue for nonprofits. Can you prove it? And so we ran an A/B split test with their help. We demonstrated a 14% revenue per visit lift as a result of our Chrome plugin, which was called the We Care Reminder. And when you shopped around at any participating store, it would tell you, thank you for shopping at insert store name here to support insert cause name here. And the data showed the lift, and 3 months later, they terminated our agreement. Could be a coincidence, but then 9 months later, they launched Smile. So we like to think that perhaps we inspired Smile. Smile raised $450 million for nonprofits. They dropped down the commission percentage to 0.5%. And they announced in January of this year that they were going to sunset it. They shut it down at midnight on President's Day. So along the way, I had acquired the eMarketing Association to sort of, and that was sort of by accident. It was a family tragedy, and the former owners, and I loaned them a bunch of money, so they really sort of wanted me to have it. And when I wasn't able to, run We Care anymore, I got involved in starting a nonprofit, Giving Forward, in the cause marketing category to try to build other tech stacks that nonprofits couldn't build themselves because it didn't make financial sense for them each to have to build something to do cause marketing in different ways. So that included cause marketing powered content, cause marketing powered events, and eventually a plan to get back into cause marketing powered e-commerce. But that wasn't supposed to happen till next year. So it's, we ended up launching that early. So, I bought a brand 3 months ago, Truth Nutrition, just so that I could do experiments that clients thought were too crazy for me to do as an agency, stuff we would suggest to clients. And they would say, where's the case study? And they would say, I'd say, well, you're the case study. So, being the case study. So, when that happens 20, 30, 50 times, eventually you decide you need a brand to be able to run some of these case studies and see, is this a great idea or a horrible idea on your dime, right? And then once you prove it out, then you can say, well, here's the case study. So that's what we're doing with Truth Nutrition. We've got some really cool stuff coming out down the pike there. So I don't sleep much, but I have great teams running these things.
That's phenomenal. I love it. I'm a longtime entrepreneur, and I'm so thrilled when I talk to other entrepreneurs, and I have an appreciation for the time and the energy and the and the commitment that it takes in order to do these things. And so, the fact that you got eMarketing Association, you got Did It, you got Giving Forward, you got Truth, you've got a lot of things on your plate. You mentioned you've got some great team members, but I'm curious, how do you sort of take a step back and think about allocating your time and your energy across these various platforms, and are you finding yourself working very reactively, or are you able to really take a step back and think about a proactive allocation of your energy and time?
Yeah, I will admit that sometimes I'm not perfectly able to predict for any given week what percentage of my time will be spent on these things. Still, the majority is spent in Did It. But from a strategic positioning perspective, actually, there's a commonality in a Venn diagram between the all of these together. Obviously, Truth Nutrition sits to the side as sort of the other half of my marketing lab, right, to allow me to run experiments that I need a willing lab partner. So when you're your own lab partner, if the experiment fails, you won't fire yourself. So
Right.
that's where that fits, right? But in regards to the others, the common theme really between those is marketers, right, and sometimes merchants. Because Giving Forward running a charity mall to replace Amazon Smile, which is multi-merchant and multi-nonprofit, the folks that the Giving Forward team talk to on the merchant side are some of the same folks that I'd like to talk to on the Did It side, or potentially as a guest, speaker at any marketing association event. So the ability for me to potentially be chatting with somebody and wear literally all three hats at the same time, or like swap them off really fast, is how it fits together strategically. So it seems crazy, and it is crazy, but there's a certain level of efficiency gain that I get out of having an opportunity to have conversations with folks, wearing whichever hat makes the most sense. But that doesn't mean that I throw the other hats in the garbage, right? They're still there because I'm sort of this, visionary and seeing how these things fit together.
Sure, sure. So there's a lot of cross pollination, it sounds like, between these various ventures, and so I think that makes a ton of sense, and really kind of acts as a portfolio in that
Absolutely.
way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I actually have an incubator called variousventures.com as well. You mentioned various ventures. I don't talk about that one since we haven't released any products yet, but as if I wasn't busy enough. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, there's some cross pollination, and a perfect example is Affiliate Summit East, which was held a couple of weeks ago here in New York at the Marriott Marquis. I convinced the folks running the event that I should do a charity headshot booth, right, and have Giving Forward run it, because we were getting ready to reestablish merchant relationships with a lot of these brands, and some brands, are there themselves. Other brands, affiliate relationships are managed by OPAs, which are affiliate specific ad agencies. And so I figured, because I needed a new headshot for myself, because mine was, really old on LinkedIn to the point where if it was a dating site, I'd be in trouble. And so I said, I need a new headshot. I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I hired a photographer. We set the equipment up. We did it as a charity photo event. And we said, like, if you like them afterwards, make a donation if you want. If you don't, you got a free headshot sponsored by Did It. And it was a huge success, right? There's a line of people down, the aisle wanting to get headshots. I had no idea if it would work or not, but from a captive audience perspective, they're waiting in line. So what was I doing? Chatting with them, right? Finding out what they're there for or whatever. So that's a perfect example of where, I was able to be, in an event environment where sort of everybody was happy. The people getting the headshots were happy. My team was happy. Maybe Giving Forward will get some donations. We don't know yet. Give me a couple of weeks. But those are the kinds of things that, like, I have as epiphanies. Like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity for me to solve more than one problem at the same time.
That's awesome. I love it. That's great. Tell us a little bit more about Giving Forward. It sounds like it sort of arose from your previous experience, and I guess maybe we'll call it the ashes of Amazon Smile. Uh, and
Well,
I'm sure, kind of coming back at it a second time, you've probably got like a lot of obviously experiences that you can build from, but you know you probably have a lot of creative thoughts on where you want to take this thing.
yeah, that's a great point, because along the way, I had decided I was going to maybe experiment with cause marketing powered content before even launching Giving Forward. I tried to buy Gawker out of the bankruptcy to turn into Gawker for Good. So if you actually Google my name and Gawker, you'll see that entire journey chronicled in the press. I wasn't able to get Gawker. I ended up not getting it. And there's an entire story we could spend a podcast on as it relates to that journey. But the cause marketing powered content, once I realized it didn't work, I decided, it would potentially work in a nonprofit context. So I started Giving Forward with the idea to build a variety of platforms So cause marketing powered content. We ran a cause marketing powered event. It was actually hugely successful, but I had forgotten how much work it is to put butts in seats, even if they're virtual seats. And so we ran this idea where we let the attendees to a free event actually pick which other nonprofit got the sponsors philanthropic dollars, and it was a huge success. I just forgot to bake in the 200 hours worth of volunteer time that was required to do it. So we were able to positively deploy that. When Amazon announced that they were shutting down Smile in January, with the shutdown being President's Day this year, everybody who knew me from the We Care days, including folks in the affiliate community and folks in the marketing community, folks in the nonprofit community, said, "Oh, here it is 10 years later, almost to the day, Amazon dropped the ball. Are you going to pick it up and run with it?" I sort of felt compelled to, right? So I said, okay, well, we'll rebuild the charity mall. We'll make it multi-nonprofit and multi-merchant. But to my knowledge, Amazon had never really assigned a product manager to Smile to evolve it beyond what it launched with. And I thought to myself, well, had I been in that role, what would I have built? Like, how would I have taken it to allow a passionate nonprofit supporter to generate even more money for a nonprofit than Smile would allow them to generate? And so there's a bunch of stuff we have in the pipeline from a tech perspective. First thing we wanted to do is allow for a person being exposed to Giving Forward for the first time to generate revenue without even making a purchase, because most people are not in the mood to make a purchase at any specific slice of time. So we added co-registration, right? So we have sponsors who are willing to pay for people just registering and then co-registering into other email lists. So that immediately generates revenue for the selected nonprofit. And then obviously we have a permission relationship and we can continue to offer them, deals. We're also adding a coupon mall to Giving Forward so that we can source coupons that are even better than the coupons you would get in a Honey or a Rakuten or a Capital One app, but you have to make a small donation to get the coupon as a thank you gift. And so that, again, will generate a donation flow that doesn't exist in Smile, or didn't exist in Smile. So, it's really this idea that, once you sort of embrace the concept of cause marketing, what else can you layer into the ecosystem? Because none of these things would be, only the top 200 nonprofits in the country could build this for themselves, right? So what about everyone else, and how do we democratize it and allow pretty much any nonprofit to use it, or just allow any supporter of a nonprofit to say, "Oh, I actually Troop 19 of the Boy Scouts. That's my selected one. As long as they have their own 501c3 EIN number, that's all we need, because we can route the dollars their way." So that's really been sort of my vision. There is, can we, as a 501c3 ourselves, right, figure out how to do these things like replace Amazon Smile, which was doing $100 million a year donation clip when they shut it down. And because it's 0.5%, if you do the math, that's $20 billion worth of Smile sales, right? That evaporated from a cause marketing perspective. Now, how many of those people will say, "Oh, I can get to make this purchase at Walmart through Giving Forward," and then choose not to use Amazon? I don't know. I mean, Prime is pretty sticky. So I don't know that a whole lot of people are going to change their behavior and say, "Well, I'm so upset at Amazon, I'm going to leave and go purchase elsewhere." But because we have co-reg and we have services and we have, B2B services, B2C services, so many new things that Amazon didn't even sell, we think we can do like 5 to 10x revenue per supporter more than Smile was doing, because Smile was really de minimis for most nonprofits. It was nice. They certainly loved to get the money, but it really wasn't that material. I think we can be material. I think we can come up with a bunch of things where we create this triangular effect between brands and merchants and businesses, the consumer and the nonprofit, to where and we become like the glue that holds it all together. So it's super exciting. It's one of the things that gets me up every day is the idea of building these kinds of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's fascinating. This whole idea of kind of like crowdsourcing, in taking the various causes and nonprofit interests that so many, in particular, Americans have, and allowing them to help while they're making purchases. It just makes a ton of sense. And I think that while that Amazon property there is a big horse in the field, there's so much more going on out there, right? And so if you can become the default platform for the rest of the e-commerce world, and have nonprofit partners help promote this, right? Then I think it could be a huge windfall for everybody involved. So congrats, that's really a powerful story.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like the layers keep getting added to it, right? So the affiliate summit photo booth, charity photo booth, even though I don't have the KPIs from it yet, I'm feeling like it was such a positive experience for everybody that I registered the domain name goodpics.org, right? And that we're going to systematize it so that anybody who's having an event can basically do a charity headshot layered into their event. Or we can use it to drive foot traffic into things like a mall, or even just a company could host a headshot event where like all their internal people get their fresh headshots in the AM, but in the PM they make it open to the community, and then local nonprofits can send their supporters in to get headshots in exchange for money for them, right?
Right.
So it's really fun, if you leave yourself open to inventing this stuff as you go. Certain things will rise to the surface. The cream rises to the top, and the worst ideas fail, and you're like, okay, I learned something.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It's about experimenting and trying things, and the great ones stick. So marketers out there, you heard it here. Kevin can help create a professional headshot environment for your events, and have that benefit nonprofits. So it just makes everybody feel better about getting that headshot, and it'll add a great element to your event, whatever it may be.
Yep.
So Kevin, on the did it side, you've done a tremendous amount, as you mentioned, in the history, right, from the very beginning of search engine marketing, right, around SEM and SEO and digital marketing, and now you're in paid social. How did you end up in the direct mail space? And how do you see the channels play together in an omni-channel environment?
We ended up in direct mail. My former business partner, who's since retired, had a serendipitous opportunity to acquire a direct mail company because a friend of his was retiring. And because direct mail has gone digital, I was sort of willing to let him experiment. And the experiment had a good side and a bad side. The good side was we learned how powerful direct mail was. The bad side was we decided we didn't want to print it. so we ended up, eventually shutting down our printing facilities and outsourcing that. There's no shortage of variable digital printing facilities that can actually execute on it. Where we added value was in understanding data, understanding lists, understanding different postal rates, thinking about how to integrate QR codes the same way that your team does, right, to do tracking and create Glengarry leads as a result of a direct mailing, right, that the internal sales teams at either B2B or high value B2C companies, can take advantage of. And we're sort of media channel agnostic on paid media, like whatever in combination with each other lifts the boat highest the quickest is what we want to do. So when we launched a green power company on Long Island called Community Power LI, we didn't know, was Facebook going to rock it, was search going to kill it, was the TV ads that we were buying going to be great, the outdoor ads on the Long Island Railroad platforms. We had no idea. It ended up being direct mail was the foundation, right? It was just apropos to the way in which people were willing to upgrade their electric service to a cleaner, cheaper alternative, right? The direct mail, in particular, in conjunction with all those other things, worked really, really well, right? So that was a huge learning experience for us, because had we had to guess, on launch day of when we first started deploying media dollars, would it be direct mail that would outperform in collaboration with the other media? We probably wouldn't have picked that. In the end, it was the one that was probably the most demonstrable, from the perspective of once you had surrounded people with the brand, with a little bit of radio, a little bit of TV, a little bit of digital, right? When they got the direct mail piece, the brand was familiar to them, and they were a lot of them, just in non-scientific research, we would be like, oh yeah, we heard about you, and then we got the direct mail piece, and that was the catalyst, right? That was what pushed them over the top. Had we done direct mail in a silo, it might not have worked quite as well, right? But it was really fascinating for us to understand where direct mail fits into a media mix model, right? Can it pull its own weight, in the sort of journey of the consumer from, because you can't just harvest demand, right? Search is great at harvesting demand. We manage, millions of dollars a month worth of search budgets. And if the person knows to look for something, search is great, right? Social for certain things that are sort of low complexity, from a purchase perspective, you can sort of get the person to, engage with a social ad and do something. I mean, certain things people are open to all the time, right? Dating and dieting and, certain call to actions work great in social, but not everything, right? And so you really need to find that perfect media mix model, and understand which one does mid funnel, which one does upper funnel, which one does, lower funnel demand harvesting. I mean, the funnel's basically gone anyway, but there's still a consumer journey that we need to be mindful of. And that's direct mail for many businesses can be a critical element of that.
Well, I think that's a great omnichannel story. The Green Power Long Island story, and when you think about it, the awareness and brand building that was done across radio and TV and digital ads really set the stage for that direct mail piece to show up, as you're saying, and you don't change electricity providers like that. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know many people that do anyway. Like it's you gotta research that a little bit. You gotta feel comfortable that your power's not going to go out. Right. I mean,
Right.
It's potentially a huge problem. And so,
Well, that's one of the misnomers. They don't realize it's delivered over the identical grid. Your power can't go out. It's only how it's built that's different.
Yeah, sure. But
You have to educate people on that, right? Because they that would be a fear.
It's just not a decision you make every day, right? So you hear about it from a few different places, but those places that message, it goes away like that, right? So you get a blast of it. You're like, oh, interesting, and then it's gone, right? And you're on to the next thing. Where you get then after that, some of that awareness has been built. You get that direct mail piece, and you're holding it in your hand. You're walking from the mailbox to your kitchen, and you're trying to figure out what to do with this thing. And you're like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. Maybe I'll show this to my wife, right? Or I'm going to put this aside and come back to this. This is kind of interesting. It has that ability for you to take it back, share it, put it up on a refrigerator or a pinboard, right? All those kind of things that enable the message to last a longer period of time and use as a reference point. So, I go on the web, I can research this a little bit more, right? I can look at the referrals and, see if there's anybody in the neighborhood that's been converted to this type of thing. Like all those kind of things that require more coming back to something as a focal point for the decision. I think a printed piece delivered to the mail that you have to organize in your mind and in your physical world, can deliver these types of messages that are a great complement to all of those digital channels.
Absolutely. It also conveys a certain legitimacy, right? Somebody actually put a digital stamp on it, right, and printed it because they thought enough of it that they thought it would be valuable to you. Otherwise, it wouldn't have bothered.
Right. Exactly. So shifting gears a little bit, with all the different platforms that you're involved in, you're talking to marketing leaders all day long. I think there's a lot of question right now. What part of the economic cycle are we in? What is the impact going to be on marketing spend? And so leaders have to make decisions about, where to place their bets. And so, there's investments in paid media and earned media and direct response and branding, lots of places for marketing leaders to spend their money. How do you see the best marketers thinking through this equation right now in this time of, let's call it, economic uncertainty?
Sure. Well, in paid media, we attempt, through analytics to understand for our clients what the marginal impact of every channel and every type of media, every media dollar that we put into every channel delivers. Because that's not only useful from a marketing austerity perspective and knowing where to cut if you have to cut. If the CFO says you got to cut and the CMO has no pushback and just sort of says, all right, I'll cut 10%, I'll cut 15%, whatever it is, you should know before that call comes in exactly where to cut, right? Or the agency should. We certainly do. But equally, if all of a sudden an additional 15, 20% of budget shows up because they canceled a trade show, right? And now it's like November and they got to use the money before the end of the year. You should know exactly where to deploy that. You should know the marginal impact of those dollars, and not just in a pure bottom funnel direct response basis, but mid funnel and maybe even upper funnel as well, because there are interaction effects. So the closer you can get to this understanding of what I like to call compound marketing, which is that things sort of have these interaction effects, the more effectively you can deal with both budget shrinkage and budget expansion. And that's what I recommend to marketers. Now, philosophically, I think if others in their industry are contracting spending, I think it's actually a huge opportunity because media tends to get cheaper during these situations where there's pullbacks. And so you may be able to get your media dollars to go further in a period of marketing austerity in comparison to the go-go years. So I think, if anything, CMOs should go to their CFOs and say, hey, I think I should probably deploy an extra 15%. What do you think?
Spoken like a true marketer. Absolutely. I agree. I completely agree. And from a strategic standpoint, if the cash flow is there, then you're absolutely right. When Warren Buffett likes to say, get greedy when the market is scared, right? And so if you're a long-term player, that's the time to pounce when everybody else is running away. So great stuff.
Absolutely.
So final question for me. You've got your hands in a lot of different parts of the marketing ecosystem, and you've been involved in SEO in particular for a very long time, since even before Google was even founded. So, uh, you know, generative AI has exploded upon the scene. And, when you think about it from an SEO standpoint, it can certainly kind of complicate existing SEO efforts. If you think about trying to, make sure that your content is being captured by, Chat GPT via Bing, right? I mean, it's out there now. Bard from Google's a growing thing, and they're certainly not going to stop investing in that. Um, so, lots of new layers there to think about from an SEO standpoint. Um, how do you recommend that marketers think about generative AI in terms of its impact on SEO and then other marketing channels as well?
Sure. Well, interestingly, we made a little bit of a philosophical shift 7 or 8 years ago around SEO and started advising clients that they shouldn't think about SEO exclusively from their own domain ranking in Google for things, and rather think about how many things could they get to rank well for the keywords that solve a problem or that they, product or service that they have. And that was from what we call the SERP domination strategy, which is, well, how many of these slots could I conceivably own if I syndicated content out there and I did traditional PR and I did digital PR and I did content co-creation socially, but made sure that the stuff got published all over the place that I could think of. In particular, for mid-sized brands, right? Often the place that you syndicate the content will outrank you for that particular piece of content living external to your site. So SERP domination is not about necessarily only getting yourself to rank. Sometimes you can't rank. You're not important enough in Google's eyes to rank. But by putting your stuff out there in many places, you increase your odds, right? That you're at least one click away, because if they get to one of those other pieces of content, they'll get to you eventually, or at least make a positive brand impression. So we moved to that like philosophy for most clients about 7 or 8 years ago. Interestingly, now if you're thinking about future-proofing your SEO against LLMs or AI, right? If you think about how does an AI answer a question, what are the top 10 pizzerias in New York City, right? It's going to go out there and comb as much content as it can and try to come up with some kind of a logical conclusion from that mass of content. So that same strategy of content creation, co-creation, syndication, et cetera, is exactly what would tend to convince the LLM that you're a good pizzeria or that you have a good direct mail technology platform or whatever it is, right? So the kinds of questions that LLMs typically get asked, like make me a list or what are the top or how do I solve this, right? Your odds improve dramatically if you engaged in sort of a digital PR and social media content creation strategy, stuff like what we're doing right now, right? Because this will get transcribed. This will be out there in at least one podcast place. It'll probably have blog posts associated with it. All of that contributes to feeding either ChatGPT or Bard or whatever platform is ingesting the content in it, thinking, well, actually, Dennis, his company's platform is really good at direct mail automation, right? How does it arrive at that result? It analyzes everything it can find, right? And so if you want to future-proof your SEO, right, stop so myopically focusing on your own domain and getting that to rank. Start thinking big. Start thinking about all the places that could positively speak about you, about your brand, solving the problems that you solve, that kind of thing.
I love it. I love that idea of content syndication and using that breadth to get your brand out there, get it crawled by traditional search, but also by the LLM AI models, and try to make sure that despite the fact you may not be the biggest brand in the world, you've got a wide footprint with content sitting on lots of different platforms that are all being crawled all the time. So that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and it's very similar in the way that you would think about, like, if you've done SEO research, the whole concept of PageRank is that every link to your site is a vote, but not all votes are equal. Some votes are much more valuable. The LLMs also look at that, right? So you being in a high authority site having content syndicated there is better than you being on the kindergartner's blog page, right? But you'll take the kindergarten blog page anyway because it has no downside. So as you start to think about your content creation, content co-creation, content syndication strategies, more is better, but also strategic placement is really important, because we believe that the LLMs are grading content that they find from different locations with different levels of authority, and so you need to establish an overall momentum across several high authority locations.
Sure. Makes perfect sense. And particularly if you're Google, right? Like you're not gonna give up the franchise entirely for some new model without a lot of cross pollination there. So
Absolutely.
yeah, makes perfect sense. Well, Kevin, this has been great. I've really enjoyed chatting with you here today. And with everything you're involved in, do you have time to talk with folks if they're interested, they want to connect with you, and if so, how do they get in touch? What's the best way to reach you?
I mean, LinkedIn is always an easy way to get in contact with me. All of my brands that you see behind me, Kevin at any one of those domains all reaches me. But LinkedIn is a great way to reach out to me. Remind you of all the crazy things I've got going on. if a person just wants to connect or send me an email, happy to connect that way.
Awesome. Awesome. Everybody, Kevin Lee, great marketer, tons of experience. Reach out on LinkedIn if you want to connect with him. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us here today. And we really appreciate everything you've brought to the marketing profession, and look forward to watching things evolve at all your various enterprises.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks so much for having me.